Hello, everybody. This is Stephen Whitfield with Drilling Contractor, and we're here at the AWS booth at the 2023 ADIPEC conference in Abu Dhabi. And with me right now is Bill Vass. We're going to be speaking about generative AI and its value in subsurface. So, Bill, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to have a chance to talk to you.
So, generative AI, you know, we hear these terms all the time. AI, machine learning, all of these like cool sort of things. And maybe some of us might not know exactly what everything means. So why don't you explain to us a little bit about what generative AI is exactly?
Okay, so AI has been around for a long time, and I'll give you an example. In 1978, I worked on an autonomous underwater system, actually for oil and gas and for the Navy, and we were using neural networks then for navigation. And the challenge we ran into then, there just weren't enough parameters. There wasn't enough compute and storage. Fast forward today, things like the Alexas you see, all that other stuff, those are what we call traditional scalar vector model, ML models, that are these huge matrices that cloud computing has made possible. So there's enough compute and storage to do it now. But with generative AI, it goes from identifying and interacting or even optimizing to actually, with these new transformer models, it's called creating by combining things based on probability. Again, still scalar vector models, still the same technology that goes all the way back to the 70s, if you like, for neural networks, but just more and more advanced and continuous improvement. So now, instead of, for example, identifying a face, you can tell it to draw a face. And that's a big difference because it's generating, it's not identifying, right?
So that sounds pretty interesting, that kind of comparison there, the differentiation. So when we get into the world of oil and gas E&P, exploration and production, and maybe even going into the drilling sphere, you think about something like subsurface and sort of that kind of modeling, what value does generative AI play in that space?
Well, let me give you some basic examples. So we took one of the bedrock models that we have called Anthropic, who is a partner for us that we've also invested in. And we basically just fed it well log data, so resistance and radiometric log or X-ray log data. And just from feeding it that data, it came back immediately and said, you can ask questions like, where's the most porosity, or where could I find oil and gas based on this data? And then you can go through and ask those questions, and it was actually quite accurate. And that was without any tuning even. That was just providing the core data based on the foundational model that's trained on a huge amount of data that it gets from like Wikipedia and all these other things. Now we can extend that by doing things like having it do waveform equation calculations or predictions for waveform equation calculations for seismic, reservoir modeling, all those things. And that's, I think, the next round of what you're going to see happening in generative AI. In the engineering space, for example, we're using computational fluid dynamics, which are huge HPC runs to do. For example, calculating the drag coefficient of a car for efficiency. But now we're seeing generative AI accelerate that machine learning so that you don't have to use machine learning, so you don't have to do the big HPC runs to get instant answers. You still have to do the HPC runs to get the final answer, but you can accelerate your exploration or accelerate your understanding or accelerate your design using generative AI. So generative AI is going to be as common, I think, as spell check is today. It's just going to be part of every day when you're a geophysicist and you're operating and you're looking at large amounts of data, and you'll ask it to come to assumptions or generate reports for you that then you iterate on and continue to improve. Or if you're designing a rig, or you're doing structural analysis, you can do the structural analysis very quickly using machine learning, and then when you're happy with the design, then you do the hard HPC to prove it before you build it, right? You'll always want to do the hard HPC. But I think seeing it summarizing drilling reports, I think also you're going to see it on the downstream section in optimizing plant operations and refinery operations and things like that, and optimizing logistics. So it's going to be your partner in everything you're doing. Just like I said, you think of it like spell check. It's a partner in everything you write. Spell check didn't replace writers, though, right? And that's an important thing to put out and point out. This won't replace software developers or geophysicists or other things. It'll just make them more efficient.
That sounds like it's going to be pretty ubiquitous.
I think it is going to be everywhere. I think it's going to be part of our lives, just like, I mean, Alexa for me is all over my house, is part of my life, right? I ask the time, the weather, shopping, any of those kinds of things. You get used to those kind of voice assistants being there to help you, right? But she doesn't replace me, right? But I can ask her, to turn on the lights or things like that. So you can imagine generative AI will be, parts of your geophysical development environments where you're evaluating reservoirs. It's also in the renewable space is going to help to optimize grid operations, help to do better planning for permitting, which permitting in all domains is very complicated, right? So it's very hard for one person to understand all the different requirements legally. Gen AI can ingest all of those requirements and summarize the things necessary for permits in the future.
So notice we had to get that Alexa plug in there a little bit here at the AWS booth. We have to mention Alexa, don't we? No.
We've been doing at Amazon, machine learning for about 25 years. We do automation in our robotics for our fulfillment centers. We've been doing autonomous vehicles with things like Zoox and things like that. And of course, Alexa has been around for some time now. And so we have a lot of experience. We have over 100,000 customers doing machine learning on AWS. And then the other thing we've done is we've developed specific silicon to accelerate these large language models, both the execution of them, which we call our inference chip, or inferentia, and the training of them, which we call, of course, Trainium, along with our partners like NVIDIA, which have large-scale GPUs on AWS for the training as well. And it's also really important in AWS that these models use a lot of power. And so it's important with AWS, we have green electrons being provided to our data centers, so you're still net zero when you're training these models, because it takes a lot of compute power to train some of these models.
Now, we've kind of gone over some of the partnerships that AWS has kind of been working on, and you guys are ubiquitous in the world of, well, just AI and modeling and things like that. So I guess my last question then is just going into specific offerings, particularly in the world of energy. All of this stuff with the algorithms and the models, where does this lead in terms of product offerings in the world of energy?
Yeah, so we have our Titan model that we're building on Bedrock. So Bedrock, we believe that it isn't going to be one model to rule them all. There'll be multiple models. Just like with SageMaker, we ended up using many different models, a lot of different popular models. So we have Anthropic, we have 21 Labs, we have, which is the Jurassic model, we have the new, Meta's model and others on there, along with Titan that we're customizing ourselves. And then what we're in the process doing right now is taking those base models and adding a lot of geophysics and oil and gas and energy data to them. And then we're going to have a seismic workbench and things like that are specific for the oil and gas and energy industry. We have OSDU that we've built specifically for this as well. So I think you can see a lot more coming in this space. But I also think it's early days here, right? I mean, these are early days in the idea. I'm very excited about the idea of using it to accelerate reservoir modeling and use it to accelerate seismic processing as well. But there are early days there. I'd say that's not quite proven out yet, but I'm optimistic.
Well, for our viewers out here in the drilling contractor world, OSDU is definitely something that we've been hearing a whole lot of. So right. It'll be interesting to see where AWS kind of goes with this moving forward, because of course in the world of oil and gas drilling, all of this stuff with AI, and we see later with machine learning, things like that, that's the new frontier. Maybe it's the current frontier in the world. So it's interesting to see how that goes. So Bill, Thank you so much for letting us in on some of the inner workings here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. And remember, Gen AI is just, as it says, it goes from regular ML that can identify and optimize to generating things. That's what Gen AI means. So think of it as generating reports for you, or generating and estimating outcomes ahead of time for you, and really being just the next level of helper in your day-to-day operations.
It sounds really simple, doesn't it?
It really is. And these models are complicated. These models have as much as 200 billion parameters, and if you're a software engineer and you don't understand machine learning, you can kind of think of that as 200 billion if statements that it's written for you, right? And that's the level of complexity some of these models have. But it's an exciting time. I think there's a lot to learn in operating with these models, and the future is quite bright.
Bill, thanks again for taking the time to speak with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's great to have a chance to talk to you.
And thank you for visiting Drilling Contractor.